Hi, everybody, and a very pleasant evening to you wherever you may be. This is Comfortably Zone Radio, and you're listening to Dodgers Baseball, a tale of two cities, Brooklyn to Los Angeles. I'm your host, Peter Trunk, and my co-hosts are Linda Wilson and Bernie Rose. Linda has not arrived yet in the studio. She might be still on assignment. Bernie, how are you?
Doing well, doing well. Glad to be here as usual.
Okay, and we have a guest tonight. And
we do.
The guest, I'm just going to give a little bit of a background, and then I'm going to throw it over to Bernie Rose. Our guest tonight is a young man who lives in Brooklyn, very, very close to Ebbets Field, and he's going to share some of his stories with us tonight, especially if they have anything to do with the Knothole Gang or Leo Durocher, who we want to cover tonight. And I'm going to let Bernie introduce our guest because he has befriended him down in Florida. Bernie, go ahead.
Thank you. Well, tonight we have with us a good friend of mine, Lou Resnick. How we doing, Lou?
Doing very well. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, my pleasure. I know you're going to do great because you and I have had many conversations about Ebbets Field and a lot of the Brooklyn Dodger stuff as well as L.A., right?
Yes. This has taken me back to where I grew up. I grew up 5 blocks north of Ebbets Field.
That's fantastic. 5 blocks.
The right field fence was on Bedford Avenue and between Montgomery and Sullivan, and I grew up on Bedford Avenue and Union Street, which was 5 blocks north.
There you go. Well, before we throw it over to you, and I want you to elaborate on that and get more into that, the one thing I know we're also going to talk about Leo, the lip, tonight, and I was shocked that he is still, to find out that even to this day, he is still the 10th winningest manager of all time, even to this day. Is that a shock or what?
That's surprising.
Yeah, that's a shock. 10th.
He won over 2,000 games, and when he retired, he was 5th all time and 2nd in the National League. So I just, that's what I really knew him as, obviously, more with the Cubs. I remember when he came back to manage the Cubs. But because obviously most of his managing was in the 30s, was the 40s rather, and the 50s.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll get more into all that stuff in a little bit. Lou, why don't you take us back to Brooklyn?
Yeah.
Well, as I mentioned, I grew up 5 blocks from Ebbets Field, and the crowd roar, and you could almost tell when someone had hit a home run or there was a double play by the noise that you could hear 5 blocks away.
Isn't that something?
The field was in the middle. I mean, there were houses and stores, and it was right in the middle of Brooklyn. And it was a fascinating time to grow up because we went to a lot of games as kids. The bleacher seats were 50 cents. And if you were not doing anything and the 6th inning rolled around, they opened up the gates in the outfield, and you could walk in to Ebbets Field and go climb up and sit in a seat.
That's great.
That is great.
The bleachers were not bleacher benches. They were actual seats. You got a real seat.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to
Isn't
sit
that
there,
something?
too. They were real seats, yep.
Yeah.
And keep going.
When was your first game, Lou? When was your first game?
I don't remember my first game because I was very young at the time. I do remember watching Jackie Robinson play, and I remember going to a game when I probably was 11 or 12 years old. My birthday was during the baseball season, and my parents got good seats. My father was working, but my mother took me, and we sat behind first base as opposed to where I normally sat which was out in the bleachers. Or if you managed to get 10 ice cream wrappers from Borden's Ice Cream, you could get a seat in general admission in left field. I mean,
how cool is that?
They were only good for day games during the summer, but who cared? You went during the week, you went to a baseball game.
Exactly.
Cool.
And again,
wow, who was your favorite player when you were a kid?
Bill Hodges.
I kind of expected that. Go ahead.
Well, he was obviously well known to be one of the most popular players on the Dodgers, and we'll be talking about Happy Felton and the Knothole Gang. And I don't know if you know how the premise of how the show worked, but 3 high school baseball players would come on, and they would have a little kind of mini workout, and one of them would be picked as the winner of the contest. I don't know how or who did the picking, but the winner had to come back the following game and select his favorite Dodger to meet. And Hodges was selected more than any other Dodger. And he used to get ribbed by his teammates about that. And I found that out because a friend of mine was a friend of Duke Snyder's, and Snyder was one of the people that used to rib Hodges about it. And he said, you know, infielders pick you, first basemen pick you, catchers pick you. He said, it's not fair to the rest of us, kidding around. It was, I mean, he was on that show a lot, and whoever happened to win and came back the following time got a baseball glove. If you were a first baseman, you got a first baseman glove. It was a three-game show. And Happy Felton conducted the show dressed in a pair of dress pants and a Dodger warm-up jacket. And it was done down the right field foul line in the Dodger bullpen. And
later on, that show ran from 1950 to 1957. Later on, Happy Felton actually donned a full Dodger uniform. He used to wear a full uniform. I remember that explicitly on television, and my cousin Michael was on there once, and he won. Happy Felton, in the beginning, I think, only wore a windbreaker and a Dodger cap, but toward the end, like from 55 to 57, he wore a full uniform out on the field. And since the show went all the way to the final game, September the 24th, 1957, I guess the winner is still waiting for his prize.
I would think.
On that final show. He's waiting for his prize still. Some 60 years later or whatever, 59 years later. That's funny. The cameras were out in the bullpen, which was on the field in foul territory down the right field line, and the Dodger players would throw balls off the wall or high pop-ups or, ground balls or whatever the kid was, a shortstop or whatever. I remember it. It was really, really great. It was great because you wanted to be on that show so bad when you were watching it on TV, and you would see a kid like bobble a ground ball that Pee-wee would throw at him or something like that, and you would say, I could have caught that. I would have won. I could have caught that. That was, oh, man. And it was great. And they used to ask the kids, they used to interview the kids a little tiny bit, either before they went out on the field or after, I forget. But they used to ask them, what does your daddy do for a living? And some of the jobs that these fellows had were really 1950s jobs. They don't exist today, a shoemaker or whatever. You know what I mean? It was very, very interesting. If you go on YouTube on your computer, you can see many of these Happy Felton shows in their entirety. It's really, really great, really great. And like Lou told us, this was the pregame show. Every Dodger home game was on TV, Channel 9 in New York, and this show, Lou, what was it, about a 15-minute show, would you say?
I would guess, yeah. I think it was 15 minutes.
Yeah, it was like a 15-minute show, and I used to watch it religiously. It was great. It was fantastic because it was very exciting. You know, the stars were right there and talking and stuff. I hated when Sandy Amoros, when someone would ask to talk to Sandy Amoros, because I couldn't understand Sandy Amoros on the TV. I used to look at my mother and go, what is he saying? I don't know what he's saying. He had such a heavy accent. I didn't know what he was talking about. But if people were talking to me back then from mid-America, they wouldn't know what I was talking about either, because I spoke Brooklynese. So Lou, come on, you gotta give us more. You gotta give us more tidbits about living right there and being in the shadow of Ebbets Field. You gotta tell us some of the games you saw, some of the plays, some of the home runs, some of the whatever. Come on, let's go.
I remember a game that I went to with my dad, and unfortunately my father died when I was 16. So we used to go to games together when he was not working. But I went to a game with him, and the Dodgers were losing 8-0 going into the 8th inning. And he said to me, "Let's go." And I said, "No, Dad, I want to stay." He said, "Come on, they're losing by 8 runs. No, I want to stay." So we stayed to the 8th inning. They didn't score a run. He said, "Come on, let's get out. It's getting late." It might have been a night game. I don't remember that. It may or may not have been. But I said, "No, Dad, we're here. I want to see the last inning." Well, the Dodgers scored 9 runs in the bottom of the 9th and won the game.
You gotta be kidding! Wow.
We will never leave early. That's that. But,
well, after that, wow, that's amazing. What a great story. I was at one.
I used to be able to watch night games when I was younger, and I didn't go to the games when I was very young. But the Dodger game started at 8 o'clock, and I was allowed to watch the first inning or 9 o'clock at night, whichever was longer. So if the first inning ended at 8:30, I could watch the second. And Cincinnati came in, and Ewell Blackwell was pitching. And he was a wicked right-hander. And the Dodgers scored 15 runs in the first inning. And my mother was pitching at 10 after 9 and said, "Why aren't you in bed?" And I said, "It's the first." And she said, "It can't be. It's after 9 o'clock." And my mother, who knew enough about baseball to know what inning it was, watched, and sure enough, it was the first inning.
That's funny.
The first inning ended at 9:30.
I like those stories. I like those stories better than mine. I was at a game here in South Florida a few years back when Piazza was still with the Dodgers, and the Dodgers were up 10-0, and Piazza had hit 2 home runs. One of them was so far up in the upper deck, and they were playing in the football stadium at the time. So if you have any idea how high up that was in Dolphin Stadium, that Lasorda, and I'll never forget seeing it on the replays on TV. He stood up with his mouth wide open, and it was 10-0, and the Marlins won the game 12-10.
Oh boy!
So I like your stories better, Lou.
Yeah, so do I.
So let's get into Durocher a little bit here for a second.
Yeah, let's talk about Leo the Lip. Go ahead, Bernie.
Well, it's funny, he was there. Where did he only win 2 pennants, I think, out of all the years that you remember all the pennants that the Dodgers won, but I think he was only there for 2 of them, and of course he was suspended for 47.
Yeah, he was there for 2 of them, but he was actually active for only 1 of them, 1941, because when they won in 47, he had been suspended.
That's right, and so. You're right.
And he
was not there.
48.
Bert Schotten was the manager.
Yes.
Now, there's a great name right there, Bert Schotten. Lou, you remember Bert Schotten?
I do. I remember him, and I remember why he is, if I can use the term to describe someone not too many people know, famous. He is the last major league manager to manage a team wearing dress pants and a jacket, a baseball jacket. He
Now,
could not
do you want to
go out
know why? Do you want to know why Bert Shotton wore regular clothes with a Dodger jacket and cap on? You want to know why he dressed like that?
No, why?
I'll tell you why he dressed like that. He was not the manager, of course. It was Leo Durocher, and Durocher gets suspended in '47 by the CYO and the other knothole gang. We'll talk about that in a minute. And Branch Rickey doesn't know what to do. And what am I going to do for a manager? So he looks around, he goes, the only guy I can get is Bert Shotton. He gets Bert Shotton into his office and says, Bert, you got to do this. You have to do it. The day that Jackie Robinson was supposed to be his coming out party to the press at 215 Montague Street, that was the day that Durocher got suspended. Okay? So he needed a manager, and he needed a manager pretty darn quick, like he did. He looks around. The only guy he can come up with is Bert Shotton. He calls Shotton in. He goes, Bert, you got to do this. Shotton goes, no way. I promised my wife. No way, I can't do it. He goes, you got to do it. You got to do it. Leo's been suspended, and they're not going to go back. They're not going to rescind the suspension. You have to be the manager. Just do it for me for 1 year. Can't do it. Why can't you do it? I promised my wife I would never put a baseball uniform on again.
Oh.
Okay, there you go. That's why he never wore a baseball uniform. That's a good one. That's a good one.
We were talking earlier about how a lot of the managers back, if you go back far enough, did not wear uniforms. Isn't that what you were saying?
Yeah, Connie Mack never wore a uniform.
Right, for 50 years.
Yeah. See, and I would not have known that. I never knew that.
Connie Mack used to sit there with his straw hat on, his three-piece suit, and the rolled-up program in his hand with his cane, and he'd just sit there in the dugout. Mr. Mack, that was it. But Leo Durocher was quite a guy, and to be painfully honest, really, to be painfully honest. And now, was he successful? Of course he was successful. He was more than successful. He was a Hall of Famer, for God's sakes. He was extremely successful. But as a person, not so much. Leo was divorced 4 times. Now, we're talking back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Leo was divorced 4 times, and get this, he omitted his first marriage, his first wife, and his only biological child from his autobiography. He wrote an autobiography in 1975, Leo Durocher did, and nowhere to be read, nowhere to be seen in the entire book, cover to cover, was his first wife nor his only child, biological child.
No kidding. Wow.
That doesn't say too much for Leo being a stand-up guy, you know what I mean?
No.
Not too much. Not too much. Another great story that... Go ahead.
He was not popular in New York City. He was well known as a manager, when I followed the Dodgers and later he was with the Giants, his wife was Lorraine Day, and she was at most of the games, and people said he wanted her to come to the games because it would make him seem like a much nicer guy. Here's his wife, an actress, and he needed all the good publicity he could get.
For the first year he was married to Lorraine Day, she was guilty of bigamy. She was not divorced yet for 1 full year after she married Leo Durocher.
No kidding.
Yep.
Wow.
Not officially divorced. The divorce was not final until 1 year into their marriage. So for their first year of marriage, Lorraine Day was a bigamist. Okay? Here's another story that you're going to love. You're going to love this. You love Bert Shotton, why he never wore a uniform. He promised his wife he'd never put on a uniform again. You love that one, that Lorraine Day was a bigamist for the first year of their marriage. You're going to love this one, too. In the 51 playoff, which we Dodger fans hate to talk about, but let's talk about it just for a minute. When Don Mueller slid into third and broke his ankle in the ninth inning before Thompson's home run, Leo Durocher had a pinch run for him because Mueller couldn't run with a broken ankle. They took Mueller off the field on a stretcher, and Leo Durocher pinch ran Clint Hartung at third base. And there was only one reason that Leo put Clint Hartung at third base, because Leo was coaching third base, and he had been so loud and obnoxious and negative to Don Newcomb the entire day that Newcomb told him, when this game is over, I'm going to choke you to death. So when Mueller breaks his ankle and he needs a pinch runner, who does he get? Clint Hartung, 6'6", the biggest giant of the New York Giants, to be a buffer, because he figured if Newcomb strikes out the next few guys or whatever, he didn't know he was going to be relieved by Ralph Branca. He figured Newcomb strikes out the next couple of guys or gets them to pop up or whatever, he's going to come and swaddle me around the throat. So I have to have Clint Hartung, 6'6", blocking for me. And that's why Clint Hartung pinch ran.
Amazing.
Okay, the floor is back open to Lou. Lou, come on, let's have another one. Let's have another story, another remembrance.
Well, quickly on that 51 playoff game, you know who the other pitcher was in the bullpen besides Ralph Branca?
Carl Erskine.
And apparently Erskine bounced the curveball. The other interesting point,
which was great. Which, you know, if you think about it, we being baseball fans, come on, let's think about it. Dressen calls the bullpen. Clyde Sukeforth answers the phone. He goes, which one is hot? Which one is ready? And he says, well, Erskine just bounced the curveball. That's the guy you want to bring in. You don't want a guy coming in who just gave up a home run 24 hours before that to Bobby Thompson, Ralph Branca. You want to bring the guy in who's going to bounce a curveball and make Thompson swing out of his shoes to it and strike out. What a terrible, terrible call that was to bring in Ralph Branca. Oh, boy. That's
who the next batter was behind Thompson?
Yes, Willie Mays.
Yes, his rookie year.
You're talking to guys who've been around the block, Lou. You're talking to guys that have been around the block. We know our baseball here. Tell me something. Let's jump off of Leo just for a second. Tell me anything you remember about seeing Jackie Robinson in his prime. Because when I saw Jackie Robinson, and I did see Jackie Robinson, he was thick-waisted and gray-haired, and he was past his prime. I want you to tell me some things you remember about Jackie when he was still young and lithe. Tell us something.
When you watched him on the bases, he never stopped moving. He might be standing, just moving 2 feet, but he never stopped moving. And it got to the point where the pitchers watched him a lot because they think he would take off while they were at the Rosenbag or doing something else, and I think that was part of his game and what he wanted to do. He wanted the pitchers paying attention to him and not the hitters. He was fiercely competitive. I mean, when he went into second base, he went into second base. And of course, in those days, they wore spikes that could do a lot of damage. But he was amazing. I mean, people would go to the games, and no matter what they were doing, when he came to bat, they stopped to see him hit. And if he got on base, you wanted to watch him. He had when he ran, when a ball was hit to either right field or center field, and he's headed to second base, he's thinking, am I going to be able to get to third? He never stopped at a base. He always ran past it to see if somebody would make a mistake, the ball was going to, he was always looking to take advantage. He was just, that's the way he played. And of course, he played second, well, his first year, he played first base, but his second year, he moved to second.
Right.
because Hodges came up as a catcher, and when the Dodgers brought Campanella up, Campanella could only catch. Hodges went from home to first. Robinson went from first to second. And that's the way the lineup stayed until, of course, when he got older. And then they had Jim Gilliam and other second basemen, and he played third and left field. But he was literally always in motion on the bases, always.
He could take a game over. He could take the whole game over with not only hitting, but like you said, on the base stats. He could dominate a game. He was the closest thing I've ever seen to that, and I've been following baseball for a pretty long time now, was in his prime, Rickey Henderson did much the same. He would get on base and he would just he would ruin the pitcher. The pitcher didn't know whether to step off or balk or whatever. And Robinson was the forebearer of that, and he was just a hell of a ball player. He would beat you any way he could beat you, Jackie.
Robinson on third base was worth going to the game for, just to watch on third base, because he would take his lead, and as soon as the pitcher stepped on the rubber, he would bluff coming home, almost every pitch. I mean, it was just like, and you know he's not going to steal home all the time, but you're not sure. And the pitchers, and out of the corner of the eye, they're watching him. And that was his game. His game was take the pitcher's mind off the hitter. And he had a couple of pretty good hitters behind him, so it didn't hurt their game either.
Just a couple, yeah.
And here's the funny thing now.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to get back to Durocher because...
Go ahead, Leo. Go ahead, Leo. Talk about Leo.
Well, it's just that I'm listening to you guys and I'm loving it, but I didn't see any of that, But I always was aware of Durocher, and I'll get into a question about when he went to the Giants in a minute. But what I really remember is him doing the color and doing the baseball games on NBC. And before he took that job with the Cubs, and I used to watch him with the Cubs when I could, just because it was like historic for me to see this old Dodger that I was never really able to see. So he even hosted a comedy show on NBC for a little bit and a jackpot bowling show, which I had forgotten about. And I would always watch and he actually seemed like a nice guy, but I know he had a lot of bad, he had a reputation of kind of being an a-hole,
Yeah, well, he managed after the Cubs, don't you?
The Astros, yeah.
Yes, Houston Astros, yes, he did. Yes,
for
he did.
A couple of years. But
now, how about that quote? Go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask about how they felt about him in Brooklyn when he went to the Giants, and if Lou or you, Peter, had any interesting tidbits on that.
I was 2 years old, so I don't know.
Oh, okay.
And Lou must have been about 6 or 7, so I'm not sure he knows either. But I'll give him a chance. Go ahead, Lou. What do you think?
I remember toward the end of his career with the Giants. Well, first of all Dodger fans hated the Giants and everybody who was on the Giants. So that was automatic. But Durocher made himself easy to hate because he wrote the book on arguing with umpires, kicking dirt, throwing things. I mean, that was just his game. And that's why everybody in Brooklyn hated him, because A, he was obnoxious, and A+, he was on the Giants. So it was that simple. I mean, in those days, if you lived in Brooklyn and you were a Brooklyn Dodger fan, you hated the Giants, and the Yankees they were the Yankees. They were off somewhere else. We weren't going to see them until October, hopefully, and we would see them a lot in October. But the Giants, you hated. I actually only went to the Polo Grounds once to watch a Giant-Dodger game. I went with my father.
No kidding.
I did go to one game. I went to one game, And I also only went to one game in Yankee Stadium. And I was fortunate enough to see Joe DiMaggio in his last year. But I only went once. Dodger games, obviously I would go to bleacher games. And, of course, we picked a good day to do this because the Mets did play a doubleheader today. But in those days, there were quite a few doubleheaders.
Yeah.
I would go to those. And twilight doubleheaders when I was, I guess, early teens, I would go with a friend of mine, and we would go at 4 o'clock in the afternoon when the gates opened up. We'd run upstairs and sit one seat apart from each other in the first row of the bleachers, and when my father got home from work, he would come and watch the game with us. And we would watch the first game and most of the second game because it would get late, even though the doubleheader started at 6. But that was the best way to spend the night. I mean, my father was there, and my friend Norm and I would go to the games. But it was a 5-block walk, and you were there. And
yeah.
And originally, there was
stuff.
the other side of Bedford Avenue. And, of course, Snyder being basically the only left-handed power hitter on the Dodgers in those days, the players worried about their cars being parked there only when Snyder was hitting.
Sure.
Otherwise, they were pretty safe.
Well, let's just finish up a little bit about Leo the Lip.
Oh.
After his suspension was over in 47, he was due to come back to manage the Dodgers in 48. And Ricky had second thoughts. Bert Schottman brought the Dodgers to a 7th game of the World Series in 47. So he was very happy with the job that Bert Schottman did, and he was looking for an excuse not to take Leo back as a manager in 48. But he was forced to do so because of the contract, et cetera. And Leo started to manage in 48. And the Dodgers got off to a very tepid start. In fact, they were 2 games under 500, I believe. I think they were 37 and 39 when Ranch Ricky talked to Giant owner Horace Stoneham and said to him, and Stoneham said, "Listen, I want to inquire about Bert Schottman. I want permission to talk to him, and I need to replace Mel Ott as my manager. He's not doing the job." Giants were floundering, and Ricky said, "Why are you interested in Bert Schottman? You could have Leo Durocher." And Stoneham almost had a heart attack. He said, "I could have who?" He said, "You could have Leo Durocher." And he actually, it's not considered a trade because it wasn't. But the Dodgers cut Leo loose. The Giants picked him up. He knew the Giants would pick him up. After the Dodgers told him he was cut loose, before they told him he was cut loose, they said, "Listen, we're cutting you loose, but the Giants are hiring you." And he went to New York the very next day and finished the season up with the Giants in 48, the second half of the season. But that's when our friend Vin Scully had a post-game or pre-game chat or interview with Durocher, and that's when Durocher told him regarding Mel Ott as a manager. That's when Durocher told a young Vin Scully, "Nice guys finish last." I guess that was a couple of years later in 1950 because Vince only got there in 1950. But reminiscing around the batting cage, Vin Scully was talking to Durocher, and he said something about you came after a Hall of Famer, Mel Ott, blah blah blah. And Durocher poo-pooed and said, "Mel Ott, he's too nice. Nice guys finish last." And Scully got that quote out of him. That was the quote that has lived on to this day.
Yeah,
nice guys finish
absolutely.
last. That was Leo. He said, you look at Mel Ott, a great guy, wonderful guy. He couldn't control his team. He couldn't win. He had no discipline. He had nothing going for himself in the clubhouse and stuff. And that's why nice guys finish last. And
right.
Vin Scully
brought that
Vin
up.
Scully, Vin Scully caught on to that quote, and that quote had legs, boy. 66 years later, we're still saying nice guys finish last, and that was Leo Durocher talking about Mel Ott.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep.
That is true.
That was, I mean, everybody remembers that. It used to be quoted a lot more often, a few years ago, but still, it's still here today. Tremendous.
Yeah, it is.
And he won
Leo,
2008 games as a manager.
And he did make the Hall of Fame, but did you realize that he made the Hall of Fame after he died? Leo was not alive. He was not alive, and he was bitter. He was bitter. He said he went home after I think his last job. Now, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I should know this, and I wouldn't bet my life on it. One of his last jobs in baseball, anyway, was third base coach for the Dodgers, right? Los Angeles Dodgers. He was the third base coach out there in '62 and '63, something like that.
Was with them.
And then he retired to wherever he retired to. I forget that also, but he waited and waited to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. The call never came, and he was bitter. And of course,
I remember hearing about that. Yeah.
Yeah. After he died, he was voted in as a manager, of course, but he never knew that he was a Hall of Famer. So
it must have been the Old Timers Committee too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
A shame, really, because that's a lot of wins.
Yeah,
a lot of games. And he was with the Dodgers as a coach during those years because he was involved in a couple of TV shows in the early 60s. He was on the Beverly Hillbillies.
Yeah.
And he wanted to sign Jethro. He wanted to sign Jethro to the Dodgers. And then he was also in an episode of The Munsters.
Yeah, he was in an episode of the talking. What was the talking horse? Mr. Ed?
Yeah, and the one with Mr. Ed. Yeah, he was in that too.
Yeah, Mr. Ed or something like that. But you see, his vociferous, firebrand, negative remarks about Walter Alston after the '62 playoffs. If I was the manager, we wouldn't have lost. We wouldn't have blown that playoff to the Giants in '62 if I was the manager, and he brought the wrong guy in and blah, 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 and all this and that. That the Dodgers really had to let him go. They had to let him go again out there in L.A. He was a cancer. The guy, he didn't know when to shut up, And,
very true, yes.
Yeah, he was bad when it came to that stuff. I read a couple of things that towards the very end of his life that he re-entered the Catholic Church and became religious again and attended Mass and all that stuff. Now, for whatever that's worth, I don't know. I just report it here because I read it in a couple of places. I don't know that to be a fact. I don't know if he turned over a new leaf at the very end of his life. That I could not swear to, but that's what I heard. And, sometimes when a guy goes through life doing all of those horrible things that he did, as a man, I'm talking about not as a baseball manager, he was excellent, but as a man, he was lacking. And he did a lot of tough stuff and said a lot of tough things and hurt a lot of people. And I don't know if he ever came to grips with that toward the end of his life, but some reports have him as doing that. I'm not so sure if he was the type to do that or not, but, hopefully he did, and hopefully he made peace with himself and whatever,
Sure.
But just switching back real quick to Happy Felton. Happy Felton was in vaudeville before he worked for the Dodgers with the Not All Gang, and he died very young. He died at age 57.
Really?
Happy did. Now, Happy was not exactly in great shape. To be kind, he was a husky man. He was rotund, but he didn't look like he missed too many meals. But he died at 57. Gosh, That is really young. That's a shame.
Yeah.
Not that uncommon, though, back in the day a little bit, but...
You know what? You're right about that. You're right about that. He never made the move to Los Angeles. He never went with the Dodgers to L.A. When the Dodgers left, he just, meandered on to whatever other things that he went into. I think he was a fight promoter, a wrestling promoter, maybe even. I'm not too sure about that, but Happy Felton.
Dodger picture for the 55 World Series.
Who's this? Now, say it again.
He's in the picture of the team picture for the Dodgers.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Yes, he is. He's in the official team picture, the World Championship picture. Yes, he is. Yep.
Only the radio announcers are in it, though, not the television announcers.
That's weird.
I know.
Interesting.
It is.
Well, radio was the big thing.
The way I heard it and the way I continue to hear it is, and I'm not saying that this is what happened, but the way I hear it and the way I heard it, if you're not there for the team picture, like they make an announcement, the team makes an announcement, the official team photograph is going to be taken at, let's say, 12 noon on Monday, October 10th or something. Be there, be in your uniform, be ready, all that stuff. If you're not there, they take the picture. I know that the world champion Mets, a couple of their, I don't know if it was the official 69 picture and also the official 86 picture, but there were people missing from those pictures, stars missing from those pictures. If you were absent, you slow, you blow. You didn't make the picture. They didn't airbrush you in or whatever. So I don't know why the Dodger TV announcers weren't in that official picture. Maybe they were absent for that. They didn't make it or whatever. I'm sure they weren't kept out on purpose. There would be no reason to keep them out on purpose, especially if you're going to include the radio guys. But they had the traveling secretary in there, and Senator John Griffin, the clubhouse man, was in there, and all that stuff. So they did a pretty good job of inclusion. They did include a lot of people in that picture. What do you think? Do you think we finished the show?
Sounds like we covered a lot.
Anybody want to add anything? Lou, you have another story for us?
I am about tapped out for tonight.
Okay. I thought maybe you had another nine-run ninth inning in you.
No, unfortunately, not another comeback like that.
Yeah, all right.
Listen, Lou, you have to come back and visit us again. We're open to all your stories, write them down, whatever. Make a list of them and stuff, and Bernie will be in touch with you, and you come back and we'll talk more about the Brooklyn Dodgers. It won't necessarily be Leo Durocher and the Knothole Gang next time. It'll be something else, but we'll always find something interesting to speak about when it comes to the Brooklyn Dodgers. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Lou. You did a great job.
Yes, I want to officially thank Lou for the job he did. Thanks for taking the time out and sharing your memories with us. And I'm almost sure that 5 minutes after we all hang up, you're going to say, oh, man, I should have told that story about the time when the foul ball came over and my father was there and blah, blah, blah. So just save those up when they start coming back. And when you come back, you can tell them. Okay?
My pleasure.
And tonight I'd just like to wrap it up. Thank Bernie as usual. And Linda,
too.
wherever you are, when you hear this recording, we missed you, Linda.
Absolutely.
You're on assignment. I always like to say that she's on assignment. Or whomever is missing, he's on assignment. I thank both of my guests or my guest and my co-host, I should say. And we'll do it again next Tuesday night, Bernie. And I'll be in touch with you. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Have a good night.
All right, you too. Great show.
Bye-bye.
Bye.